Happy morning to you all. Blue Stars Higher Secondary School welcomes you all to learn the wonderful poem Lines Written in the Early Spring, which was written by William Wordsworth. Lines Written in the Early Spring. It's a poem by William Wordsworth. It's stressing the fact that nature is meant for man's joy and pleasure. But this very source of joy is destroyed by man himself. It's a reminder to man to preserve nature in all her beauty. Now we are going to learn about the central idea of the poem, Lines Written in the Early Spring. Nature is beautiful. She brings delight to us. Yet man is unhappy and in woes. Nature serves the holy plan of peace, prosperity, and love, whereas man continuously creates miseries and sadness. He distances himself from nature. Yes, he is going away from the nature. Jealousy, enmity, and wars have deteriorated him in every aspect of life. It shames humanity. In a nutshell, we have gone wrong and thus we have harmed our soul. Now we are going to learn about the poet William Wordsworth. He is a British poet. He was born in April 7, 1770 in Cockermouth, Cumberland in Lake District. He continued his studies at Cambridge University. He made his debut as a writer in 1787 at the age of 17 years, when he published a sonnet in the European magazine Romanticism is his speciality. He was honored as England's Poet Laureate in 1843. He wrote famous poems like Tintern Abbey, The Prelude, Lucy, The Solitary Reaper, Daffodils, To the Cuckoo, The Tables Turned, etc. Then he married Mary Hutchinson in 1802. He spent the rest of his life in Royal Mount, Ambleside. Finally, he was died on April 23, 1850. In this poem, Lines Written in the Spring, about William Wordsworth, the poem is first published in the year 1798. It was published in Lyrical Ballads with S.T. Coleridge, one of his friends. Form of this poem is ballad. The rhyme scheme of this poem is AB, AB. Now we are going to learn about the title of the poem. Now looking at the title, Lines Written in the Early Spring, we can interpret. Wordsworth was comparing elements of spring to humankind. Many observations of spring were made. Therefore, the title indicates that spring was an influence of the poem. William Wordsworth probably actually wrote the poem in the spring, as the title conveys. Now we are going to learn about the theme of this poem, Lines Written in the Early Spring. William Wordsworth's theme in this poem is humans have and continue to destroy themselves. He uses the comparison of nature to humankind to convey this theme. He demonstrates how nature is happy and simple, in contrast to man with wars and violence. Wordsworth shows regret that humans do not have the elements nature does. Now we are going to learn the stanza wise explanation for this poem. First stanza. I heard 1,000 blended notes, while in a grove I sat reclined. In that sweet mood, when pleasant thoughts bring sad thoughts to the mind. Blended. Blended means mixed. Grove, small forest. Recline, sat on a resting position. Pleasant thoughts, nice thoughts or creations of mind. Now, in this first stanza, the poet reclines in a beautiful grove surrounded by the blended notes of nature, and he enjoys the scene. What scene will be there? Yes, the cuckoo, it's singing. The flowers, it is blooming nicely, and the wind, it's blowing smoothly. Everything is happening there in that small grove. It inspires a melancholy mood. That means it is bringing a sad mood to the poet, and the poet begins to have dark thoughts about humanity. Then it inspires him to bring the bad thoughts about the humanity. Next, this is the next stanza. To her fair works did nature link the human soul that through me ran, and much it grieved my heart to think what man has made of man. Here in this stanza, fair works means beautiful efforts, link means connect, soul means spirit, ran means flowed slowly, grieved, it means caused sorrow or distress, heart, emotions. Then the line, what man has made of man. It means man has deteriorated himself in every aspect of life and has created miseries and sadness. So by this stanza, what he is trying to say? Nature has connected itself to the poet's soul, leading him to sadly consider what man has made of man. Even as he does this, he enjoys the beautiful scene that surrounds him. Next stanza. Through primrose tufts in that green bower, the periwinkle trailed its wreaths, and it is my faith that every flower enjoys the air it breathes. Primrose is a flowering plant. It is a flowering plant which contains yellow colored flowers, that is primrose. Tufts, a bunch of plants. Bower, a pleasant place under the shade of trees. It is the exact place to take rest under the shadow of trees. Periwinkle, an evergreen plant with blue and white flowers, which has lovely flowers with it, isn't it? Next, trailed. Dragged. Dragged means what? Pulled. Next, wreaths. Arrangement of flowers in circle. Flowering, isn't it? Yes, next. Through this stanza, the poet looked around and saw the primrose tufts. He watched the periwinkle trailing its wreaths in that sweet bower. The flowers were pleasant and joyful. The flowers, all the flowers, it's looking very pleasant and joyful. The poet strongly believed that every flower enjoyed the air it breathed. So what he thought, the flowers, it is enjoying the air thoroughly what it breathed, isn't it? Next stanza. The birds around me hopped and played. Hopped means jumping, isn't it? Jumping with legs. Their thoughts I cannot measure, but the least motion which they made. It seemed a thrill of pleasure. Hopped means made short jumps. Motion means act of moving. Least means less. Thrill means a cause of sudden excitement. Pleasure means happiness. So through this stanza the poet tries to say, the birds around him hopped, that means jumped and played. The poet couldn't measure their thoughts. He can't able to measure whatever they are thinking. He couldn't understand what made them playful and joyous. He could only see that they were ecstatic, that means they were happy. They're all looking very, very happy. Next stanza. The budding twigs spread out their fan to catch the breezy air. It's spreading its fan to catch the breezy air, to observe the air. And I must think, do all I can, that there was pleasure there. What is budding? Budding means it is beginning to develop. It starts to bloom slowly, nicely, isn't it? Twigs. Twigs means what? Small branches of a tree. Catch, capture. Breezy, strong wind. Pleasure, happiness. Through this stanza, the poet said that the small twigs spread over their fan to catch the breeze, that is air. Every motion they made seemed a thrill of pleasure. The joyful sight of the flowers, the birds and the twigs along with the 1,000 blended notes made the poet think that there was pleasure there. They are all very happy. This is the last stanza of this poem. If this belief from heaven be sent, if such be nature's holy plan, have I not reason to lament what man has made of man? Here the word belief means faith or trust. Holy, sacred, a pure one. Reason, cause. Lament, mourn. By this stanza, the poet feels that his mood is caught between nature and the human world. Yes, his mood is there between the nature and the human world. He ought to have been a part of nature's plan. The poet laments how man has brought about miseries and disaster upon himself by severing himself from nature's holy plan. So through this stanzas of this poem, lines written in the early spring, the poet reminds the readers of the beauty of nature and the need to protect it. It's a landscape poem concerned with nature. It was a day in early spring. The poet sardines in a grove. It was then he heard some sweet music with blended notes like the song of birds, the whispering of the breeze, the rustling of leaves, twigs and the murmur of the streams, etc. The poet was in pleasant and meditative mood. The pleasant thoughts brought about by the joys in nature induced sad thoughts, as one thinks man and his world. Nature linked the human soul in the poet to her fair works. The more joy he saw in nature, the more it grieved his heart to think what man has made of man. The poet looked around and saw the primrose tufts, which has lovely and beautiful yellow flowers with it. He watched the periwinkle trailing its wreaths in that sweet bower. Periwinkle, it's a flowering plant with the blue and white flowers. The flowers seemed to be joyful, and the poet believed that poet could not measure their thoughts. Every flower enjoyed the air it breathed. The birds around him hopped and jumped and played. The poet could not measure their thoughts. He could not understand what made them playful and joyous. He could only see they were very much happy. The poet said that the small twigs spread out their fan to catch the breeze. Every motion they made seemed a thrill of pleasure to the poet's mind. The joyful sight of the various objects of nature, such as flowers, the birds, the twigs, along with 1,000 blended notes, made the poet think that there was pleasure there. The poet catches the mood between nature and the human world and said that he must have been a part of nature's plan. He feels sad about a man who is supposed to be one with the nature is plundering and destroying it. Who is plundering and destroying the nature? Yes, the man. He is plundering and destroying the nature by his activities. The poet laments how man has brought about miseries and disaster upon himself by severing himself from nature's holy plan. He is the only reason to bring up the miseries and disaster to the world, isn't it? Yes. Now we are going to learn the substance of the poem. Reclined in a grove, the poet heard the myriad voices and songs of birds and insects and rustling leaves. It led him to the thought that in the world of external nature, there was a joy of merely being. By contrast, the poet was disturbed by the thought that man's greed had done wrongs to fellow men. Though the beautiful nature brings delight to man, man remains unsatisfied and unhappy. Thus, the poet finds valid reason to be sad about man's negative activities. The poet finds valid reason to be sad about man's negative activities. Now we are going to learn the shifts. The first shift happens at the end of the second stanza when a semicolon is used, and then Wordsworth explains his regret of humans destroying humans. He writes, "The human soul that through me ran, and much it grieved my heart to think what man has made of man." Next, another major change happens in the fifth stanza when a semicolon is used again, and Wordsworth changes from consoling tone to a fearful tone as he says, what he said, "To catch the breezy air, and I must think do all I can, that there was pleasure there." Now, attitude. William Wordsworth shows two different attitudes in this poem, Lines Written in the Early Spring. A vibrant, peaceful and consoling tone towards nature and all its surroundings. Example: The budding twigs spread out their fan to catch the breezy air, and I must think, do all I can, that there was pleasure there. However, Wordsworth clearly conveys a regretful, concerned and despairing tone when referring to humankind and human qualities. Example, and much it grieved my heart to think what man has made of man. Next we are going to learn about the connotation. In the first line there is a hyperbole that tells the reader that the sounds are from spring. I heard 1,000 blended notes. At the end of the first stanza there is a paradox as Wordsworth writes, when pleasant thoughts bring sad thoughts to mind. It is indicating that his happy thoughts make him reflect and think of his sad realities. In the second stanza, Wordsworth uses personification as he says, to her fair works. Here he mentioned her for the nature. He continues to personify nature in the stanzas to come. In the third stanza, Wordsworth shows some sublime qualities as he heightens his observations of nature through the line, through primrose stars the green bower. Both fourth and fifth stanza highlight the use of personification as Wordsworth writes, the budding twigs spread out their fan. Wordsworth uses one last device that is probably most significant as uses godification. Made that word up, yet it works. If such be nature's holy plan, he sees nature as a god and our creator. So he is mentioning that nature's holy plan, where we are using the word holy for mentioning the God, isn't it? That's why this is called as personification. Here, these are the line of personification. To her works did nature laying, the human soul that through me ran, and it's my fate that every flower. Now some of the warm-up exercise. Do you go for leisurely walk? If you are a city dweller, what or who would you expect to see on your way? Yes, I go for a leisurely walk. I expect my friends who go to market to buy fresh vegetables. It would be pleasant to watch the woman sweeping the ground, spilling water, and drawing attractive column with color powders. Some elderly people can be seen watering their gardens. On the way there are 3 temples, and I watch the priests ringing the bells and chanting the slogans. If you go to a village, what scenes would you observe? In the village I can see the milkman going to the doors and selling milk. Farmers can be seen carrying plows on their shoulders and going to their fields. I would see some sparrows chirruping and pigeons fluttering about. The shepherd singing some folk songs drives the cattle with a stick, tapping on the ground. I would observe the cows grazing on the way. These are the scenes of the village. Here, lines written in early spring. It has been written by Wordsworth, the famous English romantic poet. He is popularly known as nature poet. All his themes are closely connected with nature. In this poem, the speaker tells that while sitting reclined on a woodland grove, his mind is filled with several thoughts, while he finds solace in the nature's beauty. The same beauty also fills his mind with despair. The speaker appreciates the nature for her godlike abilities of linking a human soul to herself. But he also feels grief while thinking about how cruelly man has separated himself from Mother Nature. The speaker is highly appreciative of the nature's beauty. He finds delight in the green boughs and has faith that the beautiful flowers enjoy every ounce of the air they breathe. And they are thankful for living beside nature. The speaker observes the birds which sing and hop around him, and he is in awe of these creatures. Though the speaker does not understand their language and ways, he does recognize that the birds are creating all these movements out of sheer pleasure and joy. The breeze blowing is sweet and light. The twigs are spreading out as if to catch the sweet air. And all the speaker can do is gather pleasure in their existence. The speaker questions that if this is heaven and this is the holy plan of nature, then what has man made of man? That is himself and his kind by separating from such joy. Now we are going to learn some glossary. Grove, a small area of land with a group of trees. Sate, old-fashioned spelling for sat. Recline, lean back in a position of rest. Grieve, mourn or to feel intense sorrow. Primrose, a wild plant with yellow flowers. Tufts, bunches. Bower, a pleasant shady place under trees. Periwinkle, a trailing plant with large blue flowers. Wreaths, an arrangement of flowers in the shape of a circle. Lament, to express sorrow or unhappiness about something. These are all the textual exercises given at the book back. Find the words from the poem that convey the following ideas: connected together, blended, spread over the surface of the ground in a straggling manner, trailed, make out or understand, measure, slender woody shoots growing from branches or stems of trees, budding twigs. Complete the summary of the poem by filling in the blanks with the words given below. The poet, in a relaxed state of mind, is sitting in a grove. He reflects on how his mood brings pleasant thoughts, which are inevitably followed by sorrowful ones. He feels connected to all of nature and senses an inherent joy in all creations. He has faith in the fact that all the primroses and periwinkles around him savor the air they breathe. He feels that every bird in the grove moves with ecstasy. As the twigs catch the breezy air, they do so with the same pleasure pervading all life on earth. This joy of nature seems to be heaven sent. Nature's holy plan is to offer joy and peace to all forms of life on earth. The poet's pleasant train of thought slowly leads to the sad reflection of how mankind alone has wrought sorrow and suffering upon itself. He firmly believes that man is meant to spend his days blissfully taking part in the vitality and joy surrounding him in abundance. He therefore concludes, rhetorically emphasizing that he has good reason to lament the distress man unnecessarily brings upon himself. Now we are going to learn the appreciation questions. Read the lines given below and answer the questions that follow. And it's my faith that every flower enjoys the air it breathes. What is the poet's faith? The poet's faith is that every flower enjoys its life. What right of nature do we see here? We see the happiness of nature here. Second, and I must think, do all I can, that there was pleasure there. What did the poet notice about the twigs? The twigs tried to catch the breezy air. What was the poet's thought about them? The poet's thought was that they were all very happy. If this belief from heaven be sent, if such be nature's holy plan. What does heaven refer to? Heaven refers to God. Why does the poet call it holy? As this is the plan of God, he calls it holy. Additional appreciation questions. I heard 1,000 blended notes. While in a grove, I sat reclined. Where did the poet sit? The poet sat in a grove, a small forest. What did he hear? He heard the music created by nature and birds. To her fair works did nature link the human soul that through me ran. Whose fair work does the poet talk about? The poet talks about the fair work of nature. What is the fair work? The fair work is that nature links itself to the human soul. But the least motion which they made, it seemed a thrill of pleasure. Whom does the term they refer to? The term they refers to the birds. What was the pleasure? The least movement of the birds seemed to be a pleasure. Next we are going to learn about the ERCs. Explain the following lines with reference to the context in about 4 or 5 sentences each. In that sweet mood when pleasant thoughts bring sad thoughts to the mind. Reference. These lines are taken from the poem Lines Written in the Early Spring, written by William Wordsworth. Context. The poet is sitting in a grove and his mind is filled with pleasant and sad thoughts. Explanation. In an early spring, Wordsworth sat in a small woodland grove and listened to the bird song around him. The bird songs promoted happy thoughts in his mind, but the same happy thoughts brought some sadness to him. Man did not treat nature well, though it created a strong connection with him, so he feels sad. The birds around me hopped and played, their thoughts I cannot measure. Reference. These lines are taken from the poem Lines Written in the Early Spring, written by William Wordsworth. Context. The poet wants to emphasize that the flowers and birds are happy in this world. Explanation. He felt sorry to know the reality of man in this world. Nature brings happiness to the soul of man, which is connected to nature. But man has not done anything good to mankind and nature. Wordsworth sat in a small woodland grove and listened to the bird song around him. The birds seemed to be happily jumping and playing around him, but he could not understand what they had in their mind. Have I not reason to lament what man has made of man? Reference. These lines are taken from the poem Lines Written in the Early Spring, written by William Wordsworth. Context. The poet says that man has not done anything to make man happy. Explanation. The poet thinks that mankind alone has caused sorrow to himself. Yes, he is the reason of his sorrow. Actually, man is meant to spend his days happily, so he laments the sufferings of the man. The poet's soul is lamenting the miseries of man. Figures of speech. Read the following sets of lines and identify the figures of speech used in each extract. To her fair works did nature link the human soul that through me ran. Here, nature is compared as a human here in these lines. That's why we are calling it as a personification. Here, and it is my fate that every flower enjoys the air it breathes. So, each and every flower, it enjoys the air it breathes. It's the activity of a man. That's why we are calling it as personification. What man has made of man? Man made man. These words started with the same letter M. So we are calling it as alliteration. At the same time, it is asking question to us, isn't it? That's why we are calling it as rhetorical question. Read the poem once again, identify the rhyme scheme and pick out the rhyming pairs of words. What rhyme scheme is used in this poem? AB, AB. Rhyming words. Notes, thoughts. Recline, mind. Link, think. Ran, man. Bower, flower. Breaths, breaths. Plate, made. Measure, pleasure. Fan, can. Air, there. Scent, lament. Plan, man. These are the rhyming words found in the poem. Now we are going to learn the short answers. Based on your reading of the poem, answer the following questions in a sentence or two each. How does a poet feel while enjoying the beauty of nature? The poet feels happy and sad while enjoying the beauty of nature. Does nature affect a person's thoughts and feelings? Explain. Nature affects a person's thoughts and feelings. He feels happy to be in the midst of plants and flowers. Nature is connected to the soul of man. How do people bring grief and sorrow to one another? People do not think about the welfare of others. They plan to destroy others. Thus, people bring grief and sorrow to one another. Why does the poet think that the birds were happy? Birds were jumping and playing around him. So the poet thinks that birds were happy. The poet finds joy in various objects of nature. Explain. The poet sits in a grove which is full of plants. Then he finds joy in different flowers. He enjoys looking at the birds which are jumping and playing. Bring out the poet's thoughts while comparing nature with human behavior. Nature gives its best to the human beings, but man does not treat nature well. He is responsible for the destruction of nature and man. Complete the following sentences by choosing the best options. The poet experiences sadness because he is worried about the destruction caused to nature. The poem is set in a grove. The poem speaks of man indulging in wars and acts of destruction. Now we are going to learn the paragraph questions. Do you think the poet wants to say that man is unhappy because he has lost his link with nature and forgotten how to enjoy nature, or because man is cruel to other men? First we want to write the name of the poem. Lines written in the early spring. Name of the poet, William Wordsworth. Then we have to write the theme. Nature's holy plan is offering joy and peace. And much it grieved my heart to think what man has made of man. William Wordsworth, 1770 to 1850, he was a major English poet who with S.T. Coleridge helped to launch the Romantic Age in English literature with their joint publication Lyrical Ballads. He was popularly known as nature poet. Wordsworth in his poem Lines Written in the Early Spring brings out the idea that nature is connected to man's soul. If man is close with nature, he will find happiness irrespective of whatever happens. Wordsworth sits in a small woodland grove and listens to the bird song around him. But although happy thoughts are prompted by the bird song, and the same happy thoughts bring sadness to the poet. The sad thought has come to him because man is not taking care of the fellow beings and nature. Every plant and flower feels happy and spreads happiness around him. The birds are jumping and playing around him, though he cannot understand what they think. He is sure that they are showing their happiness. The birds and the twigs on the trees seem to exist in a world of pleasure. Nature's plan is to make man happy, but because of man's destructive nature, he brings unhappiness to the world. He clearly says that man is cruel to other men because he is losing his link with nature. Nature can nurture. Describe how this process happens. Nurture means to help in the development or feed and take care of a child. Nature is a comprehensive term which covers many things. It can give different meanings in different situations. To Wordsworth, nature means anything which is not made by man. Nature can be plants, birds, fish, and even wild animals. The question is whether nature can nurture or help in the growth. An adult man's development is not merely on food but with many other things around him. Of course, nature is one among them. Nature gives a peace of mind and it gives a chance for the positive growth of man. Nature gives a lot of lessons to man how to behave in a society without hypocrisy. Next question. When humanity fails to live in harmony with nature, its effects are felt around the world. Why and how? Man is meant to live in harmony with nature. Nature is the creation of God for the benefit of man. It doesn't mean he has the right to trouble nature or destroy it. Nature has its own course. If it is disturbed, it will create trouble around us. Nature has given its own protection, but nowadays man has become very greedy and he has destroyed nature for his selfish ends. Because of this ozone layer, he is punctured and people suffer from global warming. Many natural calamities like tsunami, earthquake and flood are created due to the destruction of nature. Man has started destroying forests and it affects the rainfall. People suffer due to lack of water. This in turn affects agriculture, which is the basic need of human beings. Sociologists say that the worst is yet to come. All these problems occur to humanity because we fail to live in harmony with nature. One letter writing is given here. Write a letter to the councillor of your ward explaining why a park is necessary in your locality. On the right corner, we have to write the date. Next, left corner, we have to write the from address and the to address. From address, you have to write your own address there. Then to the to address, the councillor, Ward 32, Tirunelveli Corporation, Tirunelveli. Then the salutation, sir. Then we have to write the subject, need for a park in our locality regarding. Body of the letter. I am a resident of Nehru Colony, which falls in your ward. There are nearly 300 families in this colony with many school-going children and some senior citizens. The colony is well planned and well laid out, but it does not have a park for the children to play safely and a walking path for the adults. Now, most of the time children are playing on the streets and it leads to accidents. The senior citizens do not have any safe place to have their morning and evening walk. So, on behalf of the residents of Nehru Colony, I request you to create a park in our locality for the larger interest of children and old people. Thanking you and awaiting a positive step from you. Yours faithfully. So and so. Isn't it? This is the Thank you, students.